It was a quiet evening, like any other. I had just returned from work, exhausted from the endless reports and meetings. The house was dimly lit, soft music playing in the background. I never suspected that my life would change in just a few minutes. My wife, Laura, had left her phone on the kitchen counter. She rarely left it unattended, but I didn't think much of it. It wasn't until I heard a message ping that something pulled me closer. I had never been the type to invade her privacy. Trust was something we had always valued, or so I thought. But that night, something made me pick up the phone. Maybe it was the curiosity, or perhaps a nagging feeling that had been growing in the back of my mind for weeks. I unlocked her phone. It was easy. We both knew each other's passwords, a sign of trust or naivety. The message was from a name I didn't recognize. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow, love." My heart stopped. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just read. My hands started shaking as I scrolled up through their conversation. There it was, flirtatious messages, late-night meetups, and confessions of love. Every word felt like a dagger piercing deeper into my chest. I stood there, frozen, as the realization set in. My wife was cheating on me. The next morning, I watched Laura move around the kitchen, completely unaware that I knew. She smiled at me, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I'd be working late. My heart clenched, but I stayed quiet. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed to understand why. Why would she betray me like this? I spent the day in a haze, replaying every moment in my head. Had there been signs I missed? The late nights at work she mentioned? The sudden distance between us? My mind spiraled with doubt, confusion, and pain. I couldn't focus on anything. That evening, I made a decision. I couldn't go through this alone. There was only one person I trusted enough to confide in. My sister, Sarah. She had always been my rock, my confidant, the person I turned to when life became unbearable. I dialed her number, barely able to hold back the tears. "Hey, what's going on?" Sarah asked, sensing something was wrong. "Laura's been cheating on me," I whispered, my voice breaking. There was a pause on the other end, and then she replied with a cold calmness that surprised me. "We need to talk. Come over tomorrow." I drove to Sarah's place the next day, the weight of my discovery crushing me with each passing mile. She greeted me at the door with a look of concern but didn't press me right away. We sat in her living room, and I spilled everything. I told her about the messages, the lies, the betrayal. She listened, nodding slowly, her eyes sharp and calculating. "How do you feel?" she finally asked, her voice soft but probing. "Angry. Hurt. I don't know, like a fool, I guess. I thought we were happy." Sarah leaned forward, her expression darkening. "You're not a fool. She's the one who destroyed your trust. You have every right to be furious. But sitting here, wallowing in your pain, isn't going to solve anything." I looked at her, confused. "What are you saying?" Sarah smiled, a glint in her eyes. "I'm saying, maybe it's time you took control. Maybe it's time you did something about it." I frowned, not understanding. "Like what?" Her smile widened. "Revenge." "Revenge?" I echoed, the words sounding foreign on my tongue. I wasn't a vindictive person, but the idea planted itself in my mind, twisting and growing in ways I didn't expect. "What do you mean?" Sarah leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You can't just let her get away with this. She needs to know how it feels to be humiliated, betrayed, hurt. You could confront her directly, but where's the satisfaction in that? She'll cry, apologize, maybe even make excuses. No, she needs to be punished in a way she won't forget." I shifted uneasily. "I don't know, Sarah. That sounds extreme." Her expression softened, but her words remained sharp. "She took something from you. Your trust, your love, your life as you knew it. And you're just going to let her walk away with that? I'm not saying go crazy, but there are ways to make her feel what you're feeling. Think about it." Her words echoed in my head for the rest of the evening. It was true. Laura had stolen something precious from me, something irreplaceable. And yet, the idea of revenge felt wrong, dark, like a door I wasn't ready to open. But as the hours passed, the anger in me grew. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about reclaiming my power, my dignity. I met with Sarah again the next day. This time, she didn't wait for me to speak. I've thought about it. I have a plan. You might not like it, but I think it's exactly what you need. I hesitated, but curiosity won out. What is it? Sarah leaned in, her voice lowering to a near whisper. The first step is simple. We need to shake her world, make her question everything. How? She smirked. You need to strip down your inhibitions. Quite literally, I'm afraid. I blinked, taken aback. What do you mean? Take off your clothes, she said, her tone teasing but serious. Not now, obviously, but we need to turn the tables. We need to make her see you in a way that'll haunt her. Vulnerable yet powerful. It sounded absurd, but there was a strange logic to her words. I had always been the stable one, the predictable one. What if, for once, I let go? Sarah's plan started to make more sense as we discussed it. Look, she explained, when you confront her, she'll expect you to be broken, to beg for answers. But you need to show her that you're not the man she thinks you are anymore. You'll strip yourself of every emotional wall you've built up. Be raw, be real, and let her see the damage she's done. But you do it on your terms. The idea was wild, and a part of me still hesitated, but Sarah's confidence was contagious. I don't know if I can do it, I admitted. You can, she insisted. And when you do, it'll leave her speechless. Trust me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this would somehow help me regain control of my shattered life. Over the next few days, I prepared myself mentally for what was to come. Laura had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface, and I maintained the illusion of normalcy. But inside, I was rehearsing, planning, waiting for the perfect moment. It came one evening, when she was sitting in our bedroom, scrolling through her phone. I walked in, my heart pounding in my chest. Can we talk? I asked, my voice calm but firm. She looked up, surprised by my tone. Of course. What's going on? I hesitated for a moment, then steeled myself. This was it. I started unbuttoning my shirt. Laura's eyes widened as she watched me undress, confusion flickering across her face. What are you doing? She asked, her voice uncertain. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I removed my shirt and stood there, bare-chested, feeling exposed in a way I never had before. I found out, I said quietly, about you and him. Her face paled instantly, and she dropped her phone, her eyes wide with shock. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, I continued, my voice hardening. I saw the messages, Laura. I know everything. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence hung heavy in the air as I slowly undid my belt. Stop, Laura whispered, her voice trembling. Please, what are you doing? I looked her dead in the eyes, my hands shaking as I removed my pants, standing in front of her with nothing left to hide. I'm showing you what you've destroyed. You didn't just cheat on me, Laura. You shattered everything I thought we had. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't stop. This is what I am now, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You took everything from me, and now I'm giving you one last look at what's left. She covered her mouth, sobbing quietly, but I remained firm. This was my moment to reclaim the narrative, to take control of the story she had rewritten behind my back. The room was thick with tension, her sobs filling the air as I stood before her, raw and exposed. But despite the vulnerability, I felt powerful, perhaps for the first time in weeks. Laura had always been in control, but now, the balance had shifted. She couldn't hide behind lies or excuses any longer. I trusted you, I said, my voice steady. I gave you everything, and you threw it away for some cheap thrill. Do you even understand what you've done? She shook her head, her words caught in her throat. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I let her words hang in the air, but I knew she had nothing to offer that would undo the damage. There was no excuse that would erase the betrayal, and for the first time, I didn't care to hear her explanations. This wasn't about seeking understanding. It was about reclaiming my dignity. You didn't just betray me, Laura, I said quietly. You betrayed the life we built together. You betrayed the man who would have done anything for you. I watched her crumble, her guilt and shame consuming her. But there was no satisfaction in it, no relief. Only a quiet resolve that I had to walk away, no matter how painful it would be. "I'm done," I said, turning away, the weight of my decision heavy on my shoulders. I deserve better than this. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me, something that told me I was finally free. I left the room without another word, leaving Laura to her sobs. The sound echoed in my mind, but I forced myself to keep moving. I needed space, both physically and emotionally. I stepped out onto the porch, the cool evening air hitting my skin, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. The gravity of what I had just done sank in. I had ended something that had once meant everything to me, but now, in the clarity of the night, I realized that what we had was already broken beyond repair. No amount of apologies or promises could fix it. Laura's betrayal had poisoned the well, and the only way to save myself was to walk away. But the weight of the decision still sat heavily in my chest. The future was uncertain. What would life look like without her? Could I rebuild, move forward, and learn to trust again? These thoughts swirled in my head, but they didn't scare me as much as they had before. There was a strange freedom in knowing that I was no longer bound to the lies that had once held me captive. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Sarah. How did it go? I stared at the screen for a moment before replying, "It's over." Her response was immediate. "Good. You did what you needed to do." I wasn't sure if I believed her yet, but deep down, I knew she was right. Something had ended tonight, but something new was beginning. The following days were a blur. Laura had tried to reach out several times, sending me messages that alternated between apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Each text felt like a feeble attempt to stitch together the pieces of something that was irreparably broken. I moved into a hotel for a while, needing space away from the house. Every room there was a reminder of our life together, of the lies that had been woven into our daily routines. Being there would have suffocated me. The hotel, though impersonal and cold, was exactly what I needed: neutral ground, a place to clear my mind and think about the future. One evening, Sarah came to visit me. She brought dinner and a bottle of wine, offering the kind of comfort only a sibling could. We sat in silence for a while, eating, drinking, and letting the weight of everything hang between us. "You did the right thing," she said eventually, breaking the silence. "Did I?" I asked, not quite sure of myself. "It doesn't feel like a victory." "It's not supposed to," she replied. "It's not about winning. It's about taking back control of your life." She lost the right to be in it the moment she betrayed you. I nodded, but there was still a hollowness inside me. Laura's betrayal had left a void, and even though I knew walking away was the right choice, the path ahead felt uncertain, like a door had closed and I wasn't sure where the next one would lead. Days turned into weeks, and the silence that had once felt suffocating began to feel comforting. No more texts from Laura. No more lies. Just me, alone with my thoughts, and the quiet realization that I was beginning to heal. I returned to the house eventually, but it didn't feel like home. Every object in the house reminded me of the life we had shared, our life that had been built on trust, only to be shattered by betrayal. I started packing up Laura's things, carefully boxing them and leaving them by the door. I wasn't angry anymore. I had moved beyond that. I just needed to be free from her presence, from the memories that still lingered in every corner of our once shared space. Sarah visited often, always checking in on me, making sure I wasn't slipping into a dark place. Her support was unwavering, but I knew that this journey of healing was mine to walk alone. She had helped me see the truth, helped me take the first steps toward reclaiming my life, but now it was up to me to rebuild. One night, as I sat in the living room with the last box of Laura's things, I stared at it for a long time. I realized that, for the first time since discovering her affair, I felt something different: closure. This chapter of my life was finally ending, and the emptiness was beginning to feel like possibility. With a deep breath, I closed the box and placed it by the door. Tomorrow, I would be free. The next morning, I called Laura and told her she could come by to pick up her things. My voice was steady, devoid of the anger and pain that had consumed me just weeks before. She sounded hesitant, almost afraid, but agreed to meet later that afternoon. When she arrived, there was no dramatic confrontation, no tears or accusations. We stood in the doorway, the silence between us heavy with everything that had been left unsaid. Her eyes scanned the boxes by the door, and I could see the realization in her face. This was truly the end. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, but I didn't respond. There was no point in rehashing what had already been said. I had heard her apologies before, and while I believed she might truly be sorry, it didn't change what had happened. Some things can't be undone. She stepped forward, as if she wanted to hug me, but stopped herself. Instead, she took a deep breath and said, "I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen." I looked at her, my expression calm but firm. "But it did, and we both have to live with that now." She blinked back tears, nodded, and quietly began loading the boxes into her car. I watched her go, a strange mixture of relief and finality settling over me. When the last box was gone and she drove away, I closed the door behind her. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could truly move on. The weight of her presence, the ghost of our broken relationship, had lifted. The house felt different, lighter, emptier, but in a way that felt necessary. The final goodbye wasn't filled with anger or bitterness. It was simply the quiet acknowledgement that our story had ended, and that it was time for me to start a new one on my own. The days that followed were quieter, but not lonely. The absence of Laura, the absence of everything we had built together, created space, a blank canvas for something new. I found myself drawn to the simple things again. Morning runs, cooking for one, sitting with a book and letting the world outside pass by unnoticed. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was mine, and that was enough. Sarah checked in less frequently now, sensing that I was finding my footing. She had been my guide through the darkest moments, but I no longer needed her to hold my hand. She had helped me reclaim my life, and for that, I would always be grateful. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, I looked out at the horizon and felt a sense of calm wash over me. The pain was still there, lingering in the background, but it had dulled to something manageable, something that no longer defined me. I thought about Laura, about the life we had shared and the choices she had made. The betrayal had been a wound that cut deep, but I wasn't that broken man standing in front of her anymore. I had stripped away the layers of pain and anger, laid everything bare, and now I was standing on the other side. Stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. I realized in that quiet moment that this was more than an ending. It was a new beginning. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I raised my glass in a quiet toast to myself, to survival, to healing, and to the man I had become.